I know I repeat myself a lot, but some people don't listen the first time and some people don't even listen the second time. All right, so now that we've figured out where the footboards are gonna sit, I'm just gonna cut some plates for the mounts to go off of, and we're gonna go off of both the forward and mid control mounts on the frame. And I'm just gonna cut some of this 1 inch by 1/4 inch flat bar that we've got. Cut 4 pieces of it for either side of the bike, and then yeah, that's gonna be the beginning of the fabrication for this Dyna floorboard project. Not mounts yet, but they will be. So my dad is just marking out some lines here for me to drill the holes for the bolts to go through for the plates for the mounts. And to make it easy, you just have a piece of this 1/2 inch bar stock clamped to the bench, and then just use a utility blade to just scribe a line. A lot easier than making a bunch of little measurements with a measuring tape or whatever and trying to get a straight line that way. Now that we've got our center lines marked out on the bars so that we'll have our holes for the bolts in alignment with each other, and my dad's just marking out the center of the bolt holes. So I'm gonna have to drill those out, and they're 1.5 inches center to center on the frame. What I'm using to deburr these is actually this tapering tool, and I have it on a 1/4 inch drive T-handle, and I just use that to deburr these holes out. It does a really nice job. So we just took a bunch of rough measurements, and we're just gonna cut a bunch of 9-inch sections of our 1/2 inch bar stock. I'm gonna cut it anyway on the bandsaw. All the pieces that we're cutting right now are gonna end up being bent into shape, and I'll just show you guys where we're going from. So we're just going from the forward control mounts up to where the mounting holes are on the floorboard themselves. Just gonna center punch these, and then I'm gonna drill them out. So those should be good. So I'm just gonna get this ready to drill out, and I actually have a proper oil can this time. I was using WD-40 in some of my other videos, and a few people were kind of criticizing that, but it's okay. And what we actually do is what my dad has actually done forever. We always use like the leftover motor oil from doing like the oil changes on our motorcycles. So yeah, that's what we've got in here, because might as well reuse it. And yeah, and it actually works really well. Keeps the drill bit nice and cool, and it keeps it sharp. It all looks good. Okay, so we're ready to go. Hole number 2, 2 to go. 2 down, 2 to go. I'm just gonna do the next 2, and then we will be back to show you what else we're gonna do. Okay, so we've started actually bending the mounts and stuff. So this mount is basically completely finished for bends and stuff like that. We have to put a little bit of a twist in it there. So this mount's done, and then this is the front mount. Okay guys, so these are the beginning of the mounts on the right side of the bike. So we've got the front mount here, and then we've got the rear mount back over here. So this is the rear mount. The rear mount is just slightly under a 90-degree bend. So that was a pretty simple measurement to take. For the front one was a little bit more involved. So he actually just got this piece of wire and he fit it to where he wanted the bends all to be in the mount. This piece of wire comes super duper in handy because as you're bending your metal, you kind of just use this as a reference, and then you know like if it's fitting how you want it to. And then after we had the bends in it, that's when we figured out the kind of like little twist we needed in here to just clear that bottom bolt hole. We also just twisted it to make it so that it would be flat up against this part of the bracket, or whatever you want to call it, the tab here. Okay, so we're just getting on to the other side here, and this time I'm going to actually show you guys the process a little more involved. So my dad's just making whatever measurements he has to for his bends and stuff he's gonna do in the mounts on this side. And like again, he's using the wire here to kind of just get the bends and stuff that he needs, and then we'll use this as like a template type thing while we're bending.
Metal will expand when you warm it up, but it doesn't really bend easily until you get it hot. When I mean hot, I mean like 3,000 degrees, like hot.
Okay guys, so we're just set up in the vise here to do the first bend on the front bracket on the left side of the bike. And you guys saw my dad marking out for that, but we also have this piece of wire that has the bend already in it. Like, so this is like our template. And one good thing about heating metal to bend it is, first of all, it bends easier, but secondly is you get your bend actually in the spot you want it to be, rather than risking actually bending it somewhere where you probably won't want it to be bent, like if you were bending it cold. So you always want to make sure that the inside of your bend is hotter than the outside of your bend, because that prevents the metal from stretching. So my dad's just getting set up to make the marks for the second bend we're gonna do.
This mark is where I have to bend it.
Okay.
And it's largely guesswork at this point.
Okay guys, so that's how it's fitting with that little second bend in there. So as you can see, the wire works pretty good for getting your bends at the proper angle. It does look like we are gonna have to twist it a little bit just to make it so it sits flat against that tab there that we have on the frame. Once we do the twist in it that it needs to sit flat, then it'll basically be sitting exactly where it needs to between these two bolts here. Alright guys, so we're gonna put the little twist in this that we gotta do, and we don't really have a way of measuring how much it has to twist, so for the most part we have to eyeball it. My dad's, well, I'm gonna heat, so I'm gonna do the torch work. I'm gonna heat it up and then my dad's gonna twist it. And what we use for twisting is just a couple big crescent wrenches, because you can get one on either side of the metal and then actually twist it pretty easily that way. So another thing too guys, what my dad's doing right now is he's actually just replacing the aluminum jaws that we have in the vise with a couple little copper jaws. And the reason for that is because the aluminum is going to get soft. And the reason how come we use aluminum jaws in our vise is because, first of all, it's not as likely to mark up like steel pieces that you're working with if you don't want them to end up looking all scratched up and stuff, but it also will give a better hold than the steel that's in the jaws on the vise, because you'll be able to actually tighten it and kind of squish it around what you're working on a little bit. But for this case, we're just going to use some copper instead so that we don't have to worry about it getting soft with the torch work. And one thing too guys that we did do, we just put an arrow pointing the direction that we are going to end up wanting to twist this. Okay guys, so since I must have shut the camera off before we did that twisting on that one piece, we decided to recreate the scene and give you guys a demonstration of how we do this with the crescent wrenches. Okay.
Okay.
There it is. Nice and twisted. Twisted Metal. Isn't that the name of a band?
Twisted Sister.
Oh. It's a metal band though. So while we wait for that last piece to cool off, then we're just marking out the rear mount. So we're gonna have to put a bend in it here. Just remember, guys, to focus your heat on the inside of your bend more than the outside of your bend. You still want to heat the metal like completely, but you just want most of the heat to be on the inside of your bend. And the reason for that is because you want to be able to compress the bend on the inside rather than stretching the metal on the outside of the bend. So the hotter it is on the inside, the more the metal's actually going to squish together and kind of compress, and it's not going to actually stretch out the metal on the outside of the bend.
Remember how far you have to go.
Seems good. All right, guys, there you have the piece we were working on to begin with for the left side of the bike with the twist in it. And as you can see, now that it's twisted, it actually sits pretty good and centered between those two bolts. And yeah, it actually fits quite good. Okay, last and final bend. Alright guys, so there are the mounts all bent up, and then the right side over here looking pretty good. So the only thing left to do will be getting them ready to weld, and then we're going to weld them up and then do whatever reinforcing we need to, add some gussets here and there and some of the bends, and then clean these pieces up a bit, round the corners and stuff, and make it look good. Okay, so we got these marked out for welding. We just used Sharpie pen and just marked out the black areas where I'm going to be cutting away. So that's to just fill that area with weld, and then that'll actually give us proper clearance for the bolts. And I did try cutting it out to begin with the band saw, so I did this one with the band saw, and it wasn't that easy getting that angle. So I'm going to be just using a grinder now. Okay guys, so we are all set up and ready to weld. You guys can see the little bit of work I did on the mounts here, just grinding to give us some space for our weld. So we've got some grooves made in all of these mounts, and then we made sure to triple and quadruple and double check everything to make sure that our measurements were all good and everything is still sitting where we want it to be. And then we've just got a long bolt sitting in the frame so that we can put our ground clamp for the welder on that. And it's very important to make sure that you disconnect your battery before you do this. Well guys, check it out. Floorboards are fitted and tack welded, and they're sitting on the bike, so check it out. That's as far back as I can get in my garage, but they're not too bad on there. They're sitting up a little high, but they fit me comfortably. So anyway guys, that's it for this video. That's it for this stage of the process. So anyway guys, like always, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching my video. I hope that this helped you guys out or was at least entertaining. And like always, if you like what you see, or if you just like me, or even if you don't like me but you like my bikes, then like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. And hit that little notification bell if you want to be notified every time I put a new video out. And like always, my YouTube people, I'll catch y'all on the flip side. Peace. Right, bird? Bad bird. Hungry? Hungry bad bird. Listen. Hi. Hi. Hi, buddy. How you doing?